They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I served mine at exactly room temperature, in a boardroom, with lawyers present, and my father-in-law watching his empire collapse in real time. My wife thought I was too buried in code to notice her 4-day business trips. She was wrong. I wasn't distracted. I was building the trap. My name is Robert Callahan. I'm 49 years old, and I built Callahan Systems from nothing. Started in my garage back in 2001 with 2 programmers and a dream of creating enterprise software that didn't make people want to throw their computers out the window. 22 years later, we're managing corporate systems for half the Fortune 500. Not bad for a kid from Pittsburgh who learned to code from library books. Sarah, my wife, she was there from the beginning. Met her at a tech conference in 2000, married her 18 months later. Back then, she was working in marketing for a startup that went under 6 months after our wedding. She joined Callahan Systems as our first real marketing director in 2003. Smart move on my part, or so I thought. She understood the product, knew how to talk to clients, and for years, we were a team. Partners in business and life. We have 2 kids. Emily, 22, just finished her MBA and started working in our analytics division last year. Sharp as they come. Inherited my head for numbers and her mother's social skills. Then there's Lucas, 9 years old. Unexpected blessing, Sarah called him. We'd assumed Emily would be an only child, but Lucas showed up when Emily was 13. Changed everything, brought us closer, or at least that's what I told myself. The morning Sarah left for her business trip to Denver, I was in the kitchen making coffee. She came down in her designer travel outfit, the kind she wears when she wants to make an impression. Sleek black pants, cream blouse, those expensive heels she bought in New York last month. "You're leaving early," I said, not looking up from the coffee maker. She was checking her phone, already half gone mentally. "Flight's at 9. Client meetings start at 2 their time. 4 days seems long for a software demo." Sarah glanced up, and I saw it. That flash of irritation she'd been showing more often lately. "It's not just a demo, Robert. It's relationship building. You know how this works." I didn't know. I'd built the whole company on relationships. But something felt off. "Which client again?" "Meridian Tech," she said, too quickly. "I sent you the details last week." I nodded slowly. She wheeled her suitcase toward the door, and I followed with my coffee. In the hallway, she paused, waiting for something. The usual goodbye kiss maybe, or the be safe, I always said. Instead, I asked one more question. "You need 4 days for Meridian?" That's when her mask slipped. She turned, and her eyes went cold. "Stop being so emotional about my work trip," Sarah said, voice sharp enough to cut. "I'm not your property." The words hung there between us. 23 years of marriage, and she'd never spoken to me like that. Like I was some controlling husband instead of a man asking a reasonable question about his wife's schedule. I took a sip of coffee, kept my voice level. "Noted." She blinked, probably expecting an argument. When I didn't give her one, she adjusted her purse strap and walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, listening to her heels on the hallway tile, the elevator ding, the sound of her leaving. Then I walked straight to my study. The leather folder was exactly where I'd left it, second shelf, behind the old coding manuals Sarah never bothered to touch. Black cover, silver lettering, contingency protocol. I'd started building it 3 years ago. Not because I knew she'd cheat, but because I'd learned in business that you always have a backup plan. When your company's worth 9 figures and you've got board members, investors, and employees depending on you, you don't leave anything to chance. I opened the folder to the first page. Phase 1, activation. There was a phone number I hadn't called in 2 years. Private investigator, former FBI, the kind of guy who finds things people don't want found. I dialed. He picked up on the second ring. "Callahan." "She's moving," I said. "Flight to Denver, 9 a.m. United. I'll have someone at the airport. Same terms as we discussed." "Same terms. I want everything." "You'll have it." I hung up and pulled out the next document. Legal authorization, dated and signed 6 months ago, giving my attorney limited power of access to certain company assets. All it needed was activation. 1 email. That's all it took. By noon, 3 NDAs had been signed by people Sarah didn't know existed. By 2 p.m., her company login credentials were flagged for monitoring. By 4, I had her exact location. Not in a conference room at Meridian Tech, but checked into the Riverside Hotel, Room 847. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Just sat in my study, watching the little blue dot on my screen, and started making plans. If she wanted to play games, fine. But she was playing in a system I'd spent 2 decades building. And she just activated the trap I'd hoped I'd never need to use. Sarah's flight landed in Denver at 11:47 a.m. Mountain Time. I know because I was tracking it. Not through some jealous husband app, but through the corporate travel account she'd used to book the ticket. The same account I had administrative access to. By 1 p.m., she'd checked into the Riverside Hotel. Not under her own name. She used S. Matthews, her maiden name. Clever, or so she thought. The credit card charge came through our joint account anyway. Room service at 2:15 p.m. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, dessert. I sat in my study, watching the charges populate on my screen like a ticker tape of betrayal. My phone buzzed. The investigator. I've got confirmation, he said. Male, early 30s, checked in 20 minutes before her. Same floor, different room initially, but he's been in 847 for the past hour. Can you ID him? Working on it. I'll have photos by tonight. I didn't need photos. I already knew. The way Sarah had mentioned the trip, the defensiveness, the timing, it all pointed to someone inside the company. Someone she worked with closely enough to coordinate travel without raising flags. I opened our company directory and started filtering. Male employees, ages 28 to 35, operations or sales division, travel history matching Sarah's recent trips. The list narrowed to 4 names. I pulled their personnel files one by one, cross-referencing travel expenses. There, Ethan Porter, 33, operations manager, hired 14 months ago. I remembered the interview. Sharp kid, MIT grad, hungry to prove himself. I'd liked him, thought he had potential. His travel records overlapped with Sarah's on 6 different occasions over the past 4 months. Austin in July, Seattle in August, Chicago in September, now Denver. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. Not just an affair, a pattern, calculated, repeated, funded by my company's expense accounts. My phone buzzed again, this time a photo, grainy, taken from across a hotel lobby. Sarah, laughing, hand on the arm of a man in a business suit. Ethan Porter. I forwarded the photo to a secure folder, then opened my contacts. Found the name I needed, David Brennan, my corporate attorney. David, it's Robert. I need you to pull employment contracts for Ethan Porter. Specifically, the ethics and conduct clauses. What am I looking for? David asked. Fraternization policy. Conflict of interest. Anything that gives us leverage. There was a pause. Robert, if this is what I think it is, just pull the files, I said. I'll explain later. I hung up and opened another document. The contingency plan had multiple phases. Phase 1 was surveillance. Phase 2 was containment. Time to lock down the assets before Sarah realized she'd walked into a trap of her own making. Emily walked into my study without knocking. That's how I knew something was wrong. My daughter had learned years ago to respect closed doors, especially when I was working. But she stood there in the doorway, face pale, holding her phone like it might explode. Dad, Emily said, her voice barely steady. We need to talk. I closed my laptop. What's wrong? She came in, shut the door behind her, and sat down across from my desk. For a long moment, she just stared at her hands. I saw Mom, Emily finally said. In Denver. Yesterday. My chest tightened. You were in Denver. Client presentation for the analytics team. We flew in yesterday morning. Had meetings all afternoon. She looked up at me, and I saw tears forming. After dinner, a bunch of us went to this rooftop bar downtown. The Overlook, it's called. And I saw her. I didn't speak, just waited. She was with someone, Emily continued. A guy from the company. Ethan Porter. I recognized him from the operations floor. Her voice wavered. Dad, they weren't acting like co-workers. She was laughing, touching his arm, and he kissed her, right there on the terrace. The words hung between us. My 22-year-old daughter had just watched her mother destroy our family. I left before she saw me, Emily said, wiping her eyes. I didn't know what to say. I took photos. I'm sorry, I know it's awful, but I thought you needed to know. She handed me her phone. 3 photos, time-stamped from last night. Sarah and Ethan at a high-top table. Sarah laughing, head thrown back, Ethan's hand on her waist, and the last one, them kissing, his hand tangled in her hair. I looked at each photo carefully, then handed the phone back. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Send those to me, I said. Encrypted folder. Then delete them from your phone. Emily stared at me. Dad, aren't you? I mean, don't you want to? I already knew, I said quietly. Her eyes widened. You knew, not about the kiss, but I knew about the affair. I've been gathering evidence for 2 days. 2 days. Emily's voice rose. How long has this been going on? Months, from what I can tell. Maybe longer. She sat back, processing. Then something shifted in her expression. The shock turned to anger. What are you going to do? Handle it, I said. Legally, strategically, the right way. Emily stood up, pacing now. She's been lying to all of us. To you, to me, to Lucas. She's been using company money, company time. Dad, this is fraud on top of everything else. I know. So what's the plan? Emily asked, stopping in front of my desk. Because I'm not sitting on the sidelines while she destroys this family. I looked at my daughter. Sharp, loyal, furious on my behalf. She'd inherited my strategic mind and Sarah's steel spine. Dangerous combination. The plan, I said, is to move every asset she thinks she has access to beyond her reach. Her voting shares, her company position, her financial leverage. All of it. When? It's already started. But I need your help. Emily crossed her arms. Whatever you need. I opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. I need you to cross-reference Ethan Porter's travel expenses with your mother's for the past 6 months. Every trip, every hotel, every meal. Build me a timeline. She took the folder. Done. What else? Keep this between us. Don't tell Lucas. Don't confront your mother. Act normal. Emily nodded. What about after? When this all comes out? I met her eyes. Then we rebuild. Without her, David Brennan arrived at my house at 7 p.m., carrying 2 briefcases and wearing the expression of a man about to deliver bad news. I poured us both scotch and led him to the study. I pulled Ethan Porter's file, David said, opening the first briefcase. And I need you to sit down for this part. I was already sitting, but his tone made my gut clench. Ethan wasn't just a random hire, David continued. His application came with a recommendation letter. From Raymond Cross, Sarah's father. I set down my glass carefully. Raymond recommended him. Personally vouched for him. Called in a favor with your HR director. Pushed the hire through even though Ethan's experience was thin for the position. David slid a document across the desk. Here's the email chain. I read it. Raymond's name at the top, dated 15 months ago. Glowing praise for Ethan's potential. Emphasis on loyalty and ambition. A note at the bottom. He's someone I've mentored personally. I think he'd be a great fit for Callahan Systems. My jaw tightened. Raymond mentored him. According to this, yes. They met at some industry conference 3 years ago. Raymond's been guiding his career ever since. I leaned back, pieces clicking into place. Raymond Cross, my father-in-law, had planted Ethan Porter in my company. Whether he knew about the affair or not didn't matter. He'd created the opportunity. There's more, David said grimly. I looked into Raymond's consulting contracts with Callahan Systems. You've been paying him $200,000 a year as a strategic advisor, right? For the past decade. He retired from his firm in 2014, but I kept him on retainer. Family gesture. David opened the second briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Those consulting fees, they're being funneled through a shell company Raymond controls. That shell company has been making payments to 3 other entities, all registered in Delaware. I traced them. One is Ethan Porter's LLC. The room went cold. Raymond's been paying Ethan $25,000 every quarter for the past year, listed as consulting services, but there's no paper trail showing what those services are. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Inside, I was watching a conspiracy unfold. Raymond set this up, I said slowly. He brought Ethan into the company, paid him off, and what? Encouraged the affair. I can't prove that last part, David said. But the financial connection is clear. And here's the real problem. Raymond's been using company funds to do it. Those consulting fees you've been paying him, that's Callahan Systems' money being rerouted to pay your wife's lover. I turned back to David. Can we prove misappropriation? With an audit, yes. But Robert, if we go that route, it'll get ugly. Raymond will lawyer up, drag Sarah into it, claim it was legitimate consulting work. Let him claim whatever he wants, I said, voice hard. I want a full forensic audit of Raymond's contracts. Every payment, every invoice, every dollar. And I want the contracts terminated immediately. David nodded. I'll have the audit team start tomorrow. But you need to know, this is going to blow up your relationship with your father-in-law permanently. That relationship ended the moment he weaponized my company against me. I said, terminate the contracts. Freeze his access. And David, yeah, prepare embezzlement charges. If Raymond wants a war, he'll get one. There's a room on the 14th floor of Callahan Systems that doesn't appear on any building directory. Officially, it's listed as storage space, old server equipment, archive files, furniture we keep meaning to donate. Sarah walked past 100 times and never asked what was inside. She never noticed it required biometric access. I placed my thumb on the scanner Thursday morning. The lock clicked, and the door swung open to reveal a space that looked nothing like storage. Walnut conference table, high-back chairs, soundproof walls. No windows, no decorations. This room wasn't built for comfort. It was built for decisions that couldn't afford witnesses. 3 men were already seated. My attorney David Brennan, Michael Foster, my financial advisor who'd been managing my offshore structures for a decade, and James Sterling, head of corporate security, former NSA. I sat down at the head of the table and placed a single folder in front of me. Gentlemen, I said, we're activating the full protocol. David opened his briefcase. The trust documents are finalized. The Callahan Continuity Trust is now the majority shareholder of Callahan Systems. You're officially a consultant, not the CEO. And Sarah? I asked. Her voting shares are tied to the marital good standing clause she signed during the refinancing 2 years ago. The moment we file evidence of the affair, those shares revert to the trust automatically. She'll own nothing. Michael spoke up. I've moved your personal assets into 3 separate structures. Real estate, investments, and liquid cash. All protected from marital claims. She can fight in court, but by the time any judge sees the case, the money will be beyond her reach. The house, I asked, technically owned by a family trust with you as sole beneficiary. She has no legal claim. James Sterling slid a tablet across the table. I've implemented the new security protocols. As of 6 a.m. today, all executive floor access requires retinal scan and 2-factor authentication. Sarah's credentials will trigger a silent alert when she uses them. We'll know everywhere she goes. And Ethan Porter, his access is flagged the same way. HR has him scheduled for a mandatory ethics review tomorrow morning. He doesn't know it yet. I nodded. What about Raymond Cross? David's expression darkened. The forensic audit is complete. Raymond has been misappropriating funds for 18 months. We have enough to file criminal charges if you want to go that route. Not yet, I said. I want him to know what's coming, but I want him powerless to stop it. Terminate his consulting contract immediately. Freeze his last payment. Let him panic. Done, David said. I looked at each man in turn. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Sarah returns Saturday morning. By the time she walks through that door, every leverage point she thinks she will be gone. Her shares, her position, her father's influence, all of it. Michael leaned forward. Robert, you need to understand. When this goes public, it's going to be brutal. She'll fight. She'll make accusations. She might try to position herself as the victim. Let her try, I said. I've got bank records, hotel receipts, photographs, witness testimony, and a paper trail showing she's been conducting an affair on company time with company resources. She can spin whatever narrative she wants. The evidence doesn't lie. James added, there's one more thing. I install monitoring software on the company devices Sarah and Ethan have been using. Their email exchanges, text messages, everything. It's all backed up on a secure server. I raised an eyebrow. Is that legal? Company-owned devices, company network. You own the data. And Robert. James pulled up something on his tablet. You're going to want to read some of these messages. He handed me the tablet. I scrolled through the email chain. Messages between Sarah and Ethan, going back 7 months. Intimate, explicit, mocking. One message from Sarah, dated 3 weeks ago. He's so buried in work, he doesn't even notice I'm gone. Easiest thing I've ever gotten away with. Ethan's response. Your husband's a genius with software, but he's clueless about people. Makes it almost too easy. Another from Sarah. Raymond says the company will be mine eventually anyway. We just have to be patient. I set the tablet down carefully. My hands were steady, but inside, something cold and final had settled into place. Print all of those, I said. I want hard copies for the board meeting. Board meeting? David asked. Monday morning, I said. I'm calling an emergency session. Sarah and Raymond are both going to be there. So is Ethan. And they're going to hear exactly what they've done in front of everyone who matters. I stood up. We're not just protecting assets anymore. We're sending a message. No one steals from me. Not my wife. Not her father. Not some kid I gave a chance to. No one. Sarah's flight landed Saturday at 9 a.m. I tracked it on my phone while sitting in the kitchen with Lucas. My 9-year-old son was eating cereal, talking about his soccer game later that day, oblivious to the fact that his world was about to shatter. Emily walked in, poured herself coffee, and gave me a look. She just landed. I nodded. Let her come home. Act normal. Lucas looked up. Mom's coming back today. That's right, buddy, I said, forcing a smile. She'll be here this afternoon. Emily sat down across from me, and I saw the tension in her shoulders. My daughter had been holding this secret for 3 days, watching her mother's lies compound. It was eating at her. Dad, Emily said quietly while Lucas was distracted with his iPad. Are you really going to let her walk in here like nothing happened? No, I said, but I'm going to let her think I will, just for a little while longer. Sarah's car pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m. I was in my study, door open, waiting. I heard her heels on the hardwood, the sound of her suitcase wheels, Lucas running to hug her. Hey, baby, Sarah said, her voice bright and warm. Did you miss me? Yeah, I scored 2 goals at practice. That's amazing. We'll celebrate tonight. Where's her dad? In his office. I heard her walking down the hall. She appeared in the doorway, dressed in casual travel clothes, hair pulled back, smiling like she'd just returned from a legitimate business trip. Hey, Sarah said. Sorry I didn't call more. It was crazy busy. I looked up from my laptop. How'd it go? Really well. I think we closed the Meridian deal. Should know by next week. She was good. I'd give her that. Not a flicker of guilt, not a hint of nervousness. Just smooth, practiced deception. That's great, I said. I'm glad it was productive. Sarah stepped into the office, leaned against the desk. You okay? You seem quiet. Just tired. Busy week here too. She nodded, then glanced at my laptop screen. What are you working on? Board materials for Monday. Emergency meeting. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Emergency meeting? For what? Restructuring announcement, I said casually. Some changes to the executive team. Nothing major. Changes? Sarah's tone shifted, just barely. What kind of changes? I closed the laptop and stood up. We can talk about it Monday. You should unpack, relax. You've had a long trip. She stared at me for a moment, and I saw the calculation behind her eyes. She was trying to read me, figure out if I knew something. Robert, if there are changes happening, I should know about them now. It's nothing that can't wait until Monday, I said, walking past her toward the door. I promised Lucas I'd take him to his game. You coming? Sarah hesitated, then forced a smile. Yeah, let me change first. I left her standing in my study, and I knew she'd go straight for my laptop the moment I was gone. That's why I'd left it there, password protected, with nothing on it but routine company reports. The real files, the evidence, the proof of everything she'd done, that was locked in the hidden room on the 14th floor, where she'd never find it. Emily met me in the hallway. She bought it. For now, I said. Monday morning, everything changes. I can't wait to see her face, Emily said quietly. Neither can I. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I was in the office by 6 a.m., reviewing the final documents with David. The 14th floor conference room was set up like a courtroom, projector ready, evidence packets at each seat, water glasses positioned with surgical precision. At 8:45, board members start arriving. 10 people total, all handpicked over the years for their loyalty and competence. They knew something significant was happening, but not what. Sarah walked in at 8:50, dressed in her power suit, pearl earrings, confident smile. She took her usual seat, third from the head of the table, and nodded greetings to the others. At 8:55, Raymond Cross entered. My father-in-law looked older than I remembered, face drawn, expensive suit hanging slightly loose. He'd received his termination notice Friday afternoon. He knew this wasn't going to be a normal meeting. At 9 a.m. sharp, security escorted Ethan Porter into the room. His face went white when he saw Sarah, then Raymond, then me at the head of the table. "Have a seat, Ethan," I said calmly. "This won't take long." He sat down on the far end, hands shaking slightly. I stood up. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We're here to address several matters of corporate ethics and fiduciary responsibility." Sarah's expression didn't change, but I saw her fingers tighten on her pen. I clicked the projector. The first image appeared. Hotel receipt from Denver. 2 rooms on the same floor. Checked in 20 minutes apart. "Over the past 6 months," I said, "2 employees of Callahan Systems have been conducting a personal relationship on company time, using company resources, in violation of our ethics policy." Sarah's face went pale. Ethan stared at the table. I clicked again. Restaurant receipts, flight itineraries, expense reports. 6 trips, 6 cities, $48,000 in company money. The employees in question are Sarah Callahan, our marketing director, and Ethan Porter, operations manager. I let that hang in the air. Ethan reports directly to Sarah, making this a clear conflict of interest under Section 7 of our employment agreements. One board member gasped. Another leaned forward, studying the evidence packets. I clicked to the next slide. Email exchanges between Sarah and Ethan. I'd redacted the most explicit parts, but the intimate tone was unmistakable. These communications were conducted on company devices, company networks. They demonstrate not only a personal relationship, but deliberate concealment and misuse of corporate assets. Sarah finally spoke, voice tight. "Robert, you can't just..." "I can," I interrupted, "and I am. But we're not done yet." I turned to Raymond. "There's also the matter of consultant fraud. Raymond Cross has been receiving $200,000 annually as a strategic advisor. Our audit shows he's been funneling portions of that money to outside entities, including payments to Ethan Porter for services never rendered." Raymond stood up. "That's a lie. Those were legitimate consulting fees." "Sit down," I said, voice hard enough to stop a mid-sentence. "We have bank records. We have shell company documentation. We have payments traced directly from your accounts to Ethan's LLC. You've been using my money to pay my wife's lover." The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. "As of this moment," I continued, "Raymond Cross is terminated from all advisory positions. His consulting contracts are void, and we're referring the financial irregularities to the appropriate authorities for investigation." Raymond's face turned crimson. "You sanctimonious. After everything I've done for this company." "You mean after everything you've stolen from this company?" I corrected. "Security will escort you out after this meeting." I looked at Ethan next. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Severance will be minimal, per the ethics violation clauses in your contract. You have 1 hour to collect personal items under security supervision." Ethan didn't speak, just sat there, looking like he might be sick. Finally, I turned to Sarah. "And as for you, your position as marketing director is suspended pending the full ethics review. Your voting shares in Callahan Systems are revoked under the marital good standing clause you signed in 2022. Your company access is restricted. You will receive formal notification from legal counsel within 24 hours. Sarah stood up, shaking. "You can't do this. I'm your wife. You were my wife," I said quietly. "Now you're just someone who made very poor choices." The conference room emptied quickly after I dismissed everyone. Board members filed out, some avoiding eye contact with Sarah, others whispering to each other. Raymond stormed out with security trailing behind him. Ethan practically ran. Sarah remained seated, staring at the table. I gathered my documents, taking my time. Let her sit there. Let her process what just happened. "Robert," she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Please, can we talk privately?" "There's nothing private left between us," I said. "You made sure of that when you decided to conduct your affair in my hotels, on my credit cards, using my company as your cover. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake." I slammed the folder down on the table. The sound made her jump. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare insult me by calling it a mistake. Mistakes are one-time events. You planned 6 separate trips with him. You lie to my face every single time. You mock me in emails, called me clueless, said I was too busy to notice. Her eyes widened. You read our messages. Every single one. Company devices, Sarah. I own the data, and I know exactly what you think of me. She stood up, hands shaking. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway. I walked toward the door, then paused. You know what the worst part is? It wasn't even good betrayal. It was sloppy, careless, amateur. You didn't even have the decency to be smart about it. Where does this leave us? Sarah asked, tears forming now. In different houses, I said. The one we've been living in is owned by a Trust One Control. You have until the end of the week to find somewhere else to stay. What about Emily? Lucas, Emily already knows. She saw you with Ethan in Denver. She's the one who brought me the photos. I watched Sarah's face collapse. And Lucas will be told when the time is right. By me, not you. You're taking my children from me. I'm protecting them from watching their mother destroy herself. I opened the door. My attorney will be in touch about custody arrangements. Until then, I suggest you find a good lawyer. You're going to need one. I left her standing there and walked back to my office. Emily was waiting, along with Lucas, who I had picked up from school. Dad, is it true? Lucas asked, confused. Mom isn't coming home. I knelt down to his level. Buddy, your mom and I are having some grown-up problems. She's going to stay somewhere else for a while. But you'll still see her, and she still loves you. Did she do something bad? I glanced at Emily, who nodded slightly. Yeah, Lucas. She did. But that's between her and me, okay? What matters is that you're safe, and nothing changes how much I love you. Lucas hugged me, and I held him tight. Over his shoulder, I saw Emily wipe her eyes. This was the cost. Not the money, not the company, not even the marriage. The cost was having to explain my 9-year-old son why his mother had chosen to blow up their family. But we'd survive this. Emily was strong. Lucas was resilient, and I'd built enough of a foundation to weather the storm. Sarah had gambled everything on a relationship with a man half her age who couldn't even cover his tracks properly. She'd lost her position, her shares, her home, and her family's respect. I'd lost a wife who hadn't been worth keeping anyway. Fair trade. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Sarah's attorney requested a settlement conference. We met in a neutral office downtown. Me, David, Sarah, and her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Romano who specialized in high-asset divorces. Sarah looked different. Thinner, makeup not quite masking the exhaustion. She was staying at a hotel, burning through what remained of her personal savings. Patricia started with the standard opening. My client is willing to negotiate a fair division of assets in exchange for avoiding protracted litigation. David didn't blink. Your client signed a prenuptial agreement and a marital conduct clause. She violated both. There's nothing to negotiate. The prenup was signed 23 years ago under different circumstances. The marital conduct clause was signed 2 years ago, David interrupted. It specifically states that infidelity voids her claim to voting shares and certain assets. It's ironclad. Patricia turned to me. Mr. Callahan, surely you don't want this to become a public spectacle. Think about your children. I am thinking about my children, I said calmly. That's why I'm ensuring they don't inherit a company that's been compromised by fraud and adultery. Sarah finally spoke, voice thin. Robert, please. I'm not asking for the company. I just want enough to live on. A fair settlement. You had a fair settlement, I said. It was called our marriage. You threw it away. I made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake, I said. Harder now. You made 6 calculated trips with Ethan. You used $48,000 of company money. You mocked me in emails. You planned this with your father. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Patricia pulled out a document. We're prepared to offer a deal. Mrs. Callahan will accept a lump sum of $2 million, waive all claims to the company and real estate, and agree to joint custody of Lucas. David laughed. Actually laughed. $2 million? For what? She's entitled to nothing under the agreement she signed. She's entitled to basic support. She committed fraud, David said. She's lucky we're not pressing criminal charges. I leaned forward. Here's my offer. Sarah gets $500,000. One time, final payment. She gets supervised visitation with Lucas until he's 18. She signs away all claims to Callahan Systems, the house, and any future earnings. She also signs an NDA about the circumstances of the divorce. Sarah's face went pale. $500,000? I can't live on that. You should have thought about that before you slept with Ethan Porter in hotels I was paying for, I said. Patricia tried again. Mr. Callahan, this is punitive. No, I said. Punitive would be filing criminal charges for fraud. Punitive would be making sure she never works in this industry again. This is generous, considering what she's done. I stood up. You have 48 hours to accept. After that, the offer drops to $250,000, and we go to court. Your choice. I walked out, David following. Behind me, I heard Sarah crying. 2 days later, she signed. 18 months after Sarah signed the settlement, I stood in the main conference room of Callahan Systems, looking at the quarterly earnings report. Revenue up 32%, 3 new Fortune 500 contracts, employee retention at an all-time high. Emily walked in, tablet in hand. She'd been promoted to VP of Analytics 6 months ago, youngest executive in company history. Dad, the board approved the expansion plan. We're opening the Austin office in Q3. Good, I said. That'll put us ahead of schedule. Lucas ran in behind her, backpack bouncing. He was 11 now, taller, more confident. Dad, Coach said I made the travel team. I grinned and pulled him into a hug. That's fantastic, buddy. We'll celebrate tonight. Emily smiled at her brother, then looked at me. How's he doing with everything? Better, I said. Therapy's helping. He sees Sarah every other weekend. It's not perfect, but it's stable. Sarah had moved to Austin, taken a marketing job at a mid-sized firm. The divorce had cost her everything she'd built in this city. Lucas visited her, but the relationship was strained. Hard to respect a mother who'd blown up the family for an affair that lasted less than a year. Ethan Porter had disappeared entirely. Last I heard, he was working tech support in Denver. Raymond Cross was facing fraud charges, legal bills, eating through his retirement. The investigation had uncovered 3 more schemes he'd been running on the side. My phone buzzed. Claire Drake's name appeared, Gregory's daughter, now a friend. We'd bonded over our shared experience of watching our families implode. She was checking in about a charity event we were co-sponsoring for kids from divorced families. I texted back, confirming attendance, then looked around the office. The company was stronger than ever. My kids were thriving. The board trusted me implicitly. And me? I was different too. More careful, more strategic, but also more present. I'd learned the hard way that building an empire meant nothing if you lost yourself in the process. Emily touched my arm. You okay, Dad? Yeah, I said. I really am. That evening, I took Lucas to dinner at his favorite steakhouse. Afterwards, we walked through downtown, talking about school, soccer, his friends. Normal dad stuff. The stuff I'd almost lost. Dad, Lucas said as we reached the car, do you think you'll get married again? The question caught me off guard. I don't know, buddy. Maybe someday. What? Just wondering if we have to share you with someone else. I knelt down to his level. Lucas, listen to me. No matter what happens in my life, you and Emily come first. Always. That will never change. He hugged me tight. I know, Dad. Driving home, I thought about Sarah's last text from a few months ago. She'd asked if I ever regretted how things ended, if I thought we could have worked it out. I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some betrayals don't deserve second chances. And some men are better off alone than with someone who never valued what they had. I'd built Callahan Systems from nothing once. I'd do it again if I had to. But this time, I'd built something more important. A life where loyalty mattered, where actions had consequences, and where my kids knew their father would always protect what mattered most. That was worth more than any marriage that had been built on lies.